Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. This is Brian Trouchold with Ambition. Really excited that we're doing a webinar today and that you're going to be joining us over the next 45 minutes. This is all about building your 2018 sales management strategy. And we've got an expert panel. Over the next few minutes, we're gonna wait a beat, let folks join, but hopefully as you're joining, you're seeing a couple experts who I'll shortly introduce. But once again, thanks for joining this morning. I am Brian, your host. And we're going to spend the next 120 seconds letting folks get in here. So sit tight, wait a beat, and we'll be introducing these experts here in a few minutes. Continuing to wait, folks. I just want to keep, for the new people, let everyone know what's going. We got another 40 seconds or so. Then we're going to let people join in. Got a panel of amazing sales experts this morning to discuss 2018 sales management strategy. It's exciting. 18 more days in the year, so you better get ready. And once my clock hits 11:02, I'm going to start introducing these fine folks that we have with us. Great attendance so far, which is exciting. Looks like everyone can see. Everyone I think I can hear. So let's give a few more minutes, or a few more seconds, I should say, before we kick off the Building Your 2018 Sales Management Strategy. All right, I've got 11:02. That was my goal to start. As folks trickle in, they'll be able to tell what we're talking about, because I think these are pretty applicable questions to everyone. First of all, good morning, panelists. Thank you so much for joining. Everyone looks fantastic.
Morning, Brian.
Good morning, LB. Hey, Steve. How we doing? Trish?
Doing great, Brian.
Great. Jared, you look excellent as always. I want to...
He's totally rocking that vest, isn't he?
I know.
I'm a vest guy now.
Yeah, looks good.
Yeah. Anyway, back on topic. I'm going to quickly introduce each of you. We're going to save the, we're going to just let me read this real quick. First of all, I'm not sure how everyone else sees it, but top left, I have Trish Bertuzzi, President, Chief Strategy Officer of the Bridge Group, renowned sales strategy consultancy, as well as a fantastic author and speaker, specifically of the recent Sales Development Playbook. Hello, Trish.
Hello.
Next, in my bottom left corner, I have Steve Richard, founder and CRO, of ExecVision, also Vorsight, sales speech analytics software for coaching and improving rep performance. Also a great speaker if you've ever seen him at AISP events around the country. Very bottom, I don't know how everyone else is seeing it, but I've got Lauren Bailey, LB as I call her, founder and president of Factor 8, a firm of digital selling experts that specializes in benchmarking and training for inside sales reps and managers. Really impressive clients that Lauren works with. And lastly, right below me on our visuals here, we have Jared Houghton in the vest, my co-founder and CSO of Ambition. We are an agile sales management software platform enabling sales leaders to manage, motivate, and maximize their people. So without further ado, got a great number of attendees out there in the web today. I'd love to start asking these panelists some of the great questions we got from folks out there. I'm going to lead with Trish. You're in our number one spot. This question with you. We're going to open it up. It's a big one. So at a high level, I want you to think and answer. But like I said, 2018 is 18 days away. What strategies from a sales perspective are you discussing or recommending for your clients or your peers in 2018?
Ooh, okay.
It's high.
I'll give you
high level start.
It's high level, and I love it because I think we've gotten in our sales strategies too into the weeds. I think so many companies have forgot to ask themselves the number one question. And the number one question is, where do you want your revenue to come from? When I ask people that, they're like, well, I want 50 million. I'm like, that's not what I asked you. Where do you want it to come from? Right? Because the reason I ask the question is because if you know that you want to drive revenue from multiple markets, you might need multiple sales strategies, but you only have so many resources. So once you figure out where you want your revenue to come from, you can develop a or multiple strategies to go penetrate that market. But if you can't answer that question, like, and I'm talking a really good answer, what are you doing? That's what I think for 2018. We need to get back to that.
Okay. I love it.
Hey Trish, can I jump in? So like, for example, you're basically, what you're saying is if you're a company like an Ambition or an Exec Vision, you're trying to figure out how you're going to hit your big number for the year, being able to break it down and say about half of our revenue should come from companies that are doing 100,000 ACV, which means we have to get 25 of those logos, right? Is that
Yep.
kind of math that we're talking about versus going and selling transactionally in the SMB market with an inside salesperson? It's probably a very different selling motion and strategy.
Exactly, Steve. And the reason I'm like so hepped up about that is because maybe you have an ABR, account-based revenue strategy in play, something very different. So you use your SDRs differently, your AEs differently, you use marketing differently. Whereas if you're going to revenue to come from, then you can build out your sales and marketing go-to-market strategies because it's no longer one size fits all.
I love that. I love that.
What I love about that too is that once you understand where you're targeting, you know what kind of rep you want. And I see that happening a lot, people specializing, right? There's a huge surgence of that biz dev, SDR, BDR role. But then there's account managers, there's customer success. And when you've got your top level sales strategy, now you can put your people strategy in place. And that's what I'm really excited about for 2018. People taking a cohesive look at their people strategy. Because let's be honest, we are in a war for talent. And we can't kind of just keep throwing people at the problem. It's like throwing logs on a fire because they're burning out faster and faster. So I love talking to people about having a cohesive strategy, not just developing the rep, but the manager, right? Who's in charge of keeping and developing that rep.
Lauren Bailey dropping the first soundbite, throwing reps on the fire and letting them burn out.
Oh my God. I'm so
Logs on the
liberating
fire.
that.
I'm
so
Hashtag
logs on the fire, burning out reps, stealing it.
We're sharing that a lot.
Good.
Steve, what are you talking about with your peers, your clients, as far as strategies 2018?
Yeah, it's the selling motion, and it's not just, I mean, all of us have been around the AISP for so long and drank a lot of that Kool-Aid in a good way, and a lot of these are inside sales strategies, inside sales motions. But in reality, there's a play with the field. I mean, I just got off the phone with a guy, one of our clients, who called me and just picked my brain asking for advice, and he says he's got this new model where a field person, and there are 12 territories and 12 field people, will be paired with someone on the inside that's an overlay for that territory. But he's got 3 of them, and this is the problem. So I said, well, wait a minute, you're going to have one of these inside people kind of coordinating a territory and all the accounts within a territory with 4 field reps each. It's not going to work. That model is fundamentally going to break.
Got it backwards.
You know what I mean? And I kind of pulled them back off that to say, if you want to do that overlay type of model, you're going to have to do it on a very small basis first and prove it out and prove that works. Because what Trish is saying is it's a people business. So I think the biggest thing that we're seeing is that people are starting to realize that it's not just as simple as like divide hunters from farmers, and then from the hunters divide the SDRs from the closers, the openers from the closers. It's not that simple at all. And you just see the road littered. The next guy I got on the phone with after that other guy, he told me that of the 11 salespeople he hired at the beginning of the year, 8 of them are no longer there.
That's brutal.
I think
They burnt out because they were logs on the fire. So that's what happened.
Hey, it's cold in New England, Trish. You need to put a log on the fire.
Oh my God, it's 19 degrees here. I'm like, why do I live here? But we digress.
They're sacrificing reps. Jared, jump in really quick. And what are you talking about with clients and peers?
I think it's just building off of what everyone's saying. Like, I think you've got to look at last year's go-to-market strategy. Like, Steve, what you're talking about, like a 4-to-1 or a 1-to-4 or losing 8 reps. Like, you did something wrong. Something didn't work. There was a hypothesis, and you have to look at the data and look at the KPIs and be flexible. And right now, it's restart time. Like, January 1 is very close, and you've got to take what you learned as a leader from last year and roll it into the 18 strategy. And no one knows it better than you. So look where you failed and look where things didn't, pan out as you thought they would, and make those changes, right now. And then iterate and iterate quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this conversation got into a great turning point for question number 2, which was pretty interesting. I think that everyone, especially what Steve, Lauren, what you're talking about, growing sales teams, the continual pain is that you have few at bats. And so if you're trying to ramp effective salespeople, how do you not get 8 people who are gone by the end of the year? How are you hiring folks, more effectively so that you don't just spend a lot of money for someone that you know is good, but you can develop that talent, hopefully in an affordable way? I want to turn this over to you, Lauren, first, because you had a great point about this people burning out. What are some tips that you?
Well, clearly I've studied this, right? It's on the board behind me. I'm ready.
That's why you're on the webinar.
Right? So I've been studying new hire ramp for 20 years, right? So that's not just at Factor 8, that's out when I was running sales and training teams at SAP and Ravana. So there's a lot of pieces that come into play. Let's start with that, right? There's not a silver bullet. We have to look at hiring, of course. The new hire training program itself is critical, and there are many studies in my 20 years of experience that a good program can cut attrition and ramp in half. That's huge, right? But then we also have to look at the managers as part of that as well, because we join companies and we quit people, right? So a couple strategies that go in here. The first one is, I don't think you can solve it just with hiring, right? It's a war for talent. The employee pool is shrinking. Inside sales is growing at 10x plus. Field sales, they're not just sitting out there. Like, if you think you're going to solve it by hiring the right people, you're going to fail. So we have to invest in our training program. And there are a lot of ways as sales leaders that we do this wrong. Just to be really blunt with you, right? I mean, we didn't get in the business of training. We don't know it. And not a lot of us partner with our training departments really well or have a training department. So a couple quick tips on fixing a program. The first one is get it out of HR if you can, right? Your HR people are teaching your reps how to sell. When's the last time they made a sales call, right? So look at the leadership of your training department and make sure that it's really well partnered with sales, right? Great ones have training reporting up through sales, and the trainers are comped like managers on the success of their people. That's really big. A couple other really quick tips on new hire training. Number one, get them on the phones as soon as humanly possible. Day 2 on the job, it's okay. We got to get them talking to customers. Reps who sit in a training program for 6 weeks without picking up the phone, bad hire, right? And could be calling existing, whatever it is. Get them used to dialing the phone. The other one is call recordings, right? So Steve, you're going to love this one. I think the number one way to cut ramp time is including call recordings in your training. It's game tape. It doesn't have to be their call. It doesn't have to be a good call. But what it does is slows down the game for people so they can actually kind of hear the voice of the customer. The reason you have a ramp time, right, and if you look at this behind me, right, it's percent to go on one side and time on the other. The blue line is normal. It's kind of flat for a while, and then we start to ramp up to quota. The star is where we start to lose people, right? I've been on the job for 4 or 5 months. I'm not making any money. A good program is your red line, and all of this is recovered revenue, right, when they ramp higher, sooner, faster. Okay, when people, I think the reason there's ramp is that it's not that I don't know what to do, it's that I don't know when to do it. And call recordings fix that. So let's talk. Critical to have that in there.
I love.
Well, wait, can I just jump in 1 second? Because I think we went right into the weeds.
She wants to disagree with me. Yeah,
I think we went right into the weeds.
Right?
And this is about strategy, right?
Yeah.
So strategically, I will tell you that companies are not willing to invest in good onboarding. They will not spend onboarding and training. I'm going to go with both. And call recording, which I also think is the best thing since sliced bread. They will buy every bright, shiny toy on the face of the planet so that their SDRs and AEs can hammer time their buyers. And they will not take that money and divert it to something that's really meaningful. And what's really meaningful is the training and the call recording and building a sales enablement team to do better onboarding. It makes me insane.
Hey Trish, don't forget about recruiter fees. That's my favorite.
Oh.
I mean,
well, you'll pay a recruiter, $16,000. Yeah.
Yeah, and this actually goes back to, there was a book called The Ultimate it's Derek Gatehouse. The name is escaping me, but it's all about different salespeople who are high performers, high quota attainers in some industries, tank and crash and burn in other industries.
Yeah.
So you got to really be on the lookout for like, well, look, if you were a well-fed salesperson with tons and tons of leads that were coming at you as a new business salesperson, now we're going to pick you up and put you in an environment where you don't have tons and tons of leads coming after you, maybe at a place like an Ambition. How are you going to operate when you're on Jared's team and you have to go hunt?
Yeah.
Right? And why are you going to spend 20 grand on a recruiter for that? Don't assume, here's a big mistake people make. They assume that when they hire in the salesperson, they're going to get their Rolodex with them. That is nonsense. You can call up your Rolodex all day long to buy the new thing that salesperson's selling. And when their existing Rolodex doesn't buy it, what do you have left? You know, I mean, a very, very expensive paperweight in the form of a human being.
Yeah,
I like that. Paperweight. That could be the new one.
Yeah, with another phrase on it. Jared, you have
we've got a lot of paper and burning going on here in the blogs. Keep going.
It's cold.
Yeah.
Jared, I think you have a good model for finding those people, and I think Steve brought up a great point, which is that you can't just pick and choose someone who did great in a totally different industry and throw them into a completely new environment. You know, what are you looking for to be successful when you hire reps for our team that's going to be applicable, so that we avoid some, I think, misses at bats?
Yeah, I mean, hiring people is really hard. And I think, building off of LB, like you've got to train them, you've got to get them in on calls early and in meetings quick, and they've got to be a sponge. Like it's a two-way street. It's not just the leader, the rep has to commit to the plan and work the plan, but you have to provide, the resources to be successful. So, quick onboarding, quickly get on the phone, quickly trial by fire, and make sure they're ramping quick and you're giving that feedback often and early, and just investing in those people. And there's a lot of folks on this webinar, from small business of 0 to 5 or 10 to mid-market and enterprise. It's different, obviously, across the spectrum. Startup founders on here, you can't hire 5 people tomorrow and just say, hey, go sell. But also don't hire one. Pick 2 at a time. They're going to learn from each other. You're going to learn a lot quickly, and let them, him or her, battle it out and figure it out together. If you've got 10, 20, 30 sellers, really empower that VP of sales. Like, that person is going to own that team, and they're going to be the people that do bring over the Rolodex and scale that team. So training and learning quickly.
Hey, can I give a couple quick tips on hiring, stuff that I've just put my face in the mud on, Brian? Is that okay?
Please get in here.
So one is, the interview is almost a total waste of time. It's a pure cultural fit, but it tells you almost nothing, because you're interviewing and hiring salespeople, for God's sakes. They're all good and they'll all sell themselves well. So
they better impress in a room.
Exactly. There is no consistency around a correlation between in-person interview and success and role. That's number one. Number 2, assessments. If you're going to use an assessment tool, and there are so many out there, I don't want to get into them all. We've tested every one of them under the sun. They all have the same thing in common. They're horrible predictors of people who have never been in the sales profession. Mm-hmm. So if people have never been in the sales profession, it's not going to help. Recent college grads, SDRs that are coming in new, even people who've been around for a while, because they don't even know who they are. And they answer the questions in an inconsistent way. There's no context. However, for people who have been in the sales profession, if you want to hire a little bit more of an experienced person, there is a pretty high correlation with success with these assessments, depending on the assessment. One of our mutual friends, a guy named Kevin Gaither, he's got like an 80% success rate on those assessments when hiring for a more experienced sales role. That's the second thing. The third thing is, do reference checks. And I'm not talking about the reference that's listed on the resume, which is like their uncle that will say anything nice. Instead, what you do is you go on LinkedIn and you find people that you know in common. And if you're worth your salt, you should have people in common with this person. You should have a good network on LinkedIn. And you pick up the phone, you call them. I can personally tell you, I have made 2 horrible hires where I didn't do that. And then later on, when I talked to our mutual friends, they're like, you hired that person? I can't believe it. And then, because of having learned that lesson, then I do it as a matter of course. I recently, I escaped a bad hire by about that much because of making one phone call to a mutual friend that was very polite, but I could read between the lines. This guy was.
I want to add 2 things. One of them is job shadowing, right? There are still people who don't understand what it means that you're going to be making outbound calls. Let them come in and spend the day, get to talk to your reps, get the real skinny, right? You're almost trying to disqualify them because it's more expensive to make a bad hire. And 2 is you've got to do the sales role plays, but let's make sure that we mimic the way they're going to sell, right? There's people, like you said, Steve, doing a face-to-face interview of sell me this pen, but my job is to put on a headset and get information from a gatekeeper. So let's try to mimic that a little bit.
Hey, Lauren,
I also love it.
Lauren,
Yeah.
one real quick tip. When you have them do the shadow, debrief with the person that they were shadowing, because they will tell you all sorts of other information about
Oh, yeah.
because they don't think they're interviewing anymore.
Exactly. This guy's an idiot. He sat there on his
Right.
phone the whole time. Yeah.
You know who had a great strategy was Natasha Sakat. She would, and this is mostly for SDRs, she would make them the offer, but before their start date, they came in and spent a day moving from rep to rep to actually see what the job was. And it was a safe haven, meaning the reps could tell them anything and not have any repercussions. And she had a 50% washout rate. And she said, thank God, because these people would have been with me for 4 or 6 months and then I would have lost them. So better to, I think Jared said it's fail early. And I just thought that was brilliant.
Slow to
Absolutely
hire,
brilliant.
quick to fire. That's the entrepreneur motto. Slow to hire, quick to fire.
There you go.
I love that idea, Trish.
This has been great.
It wasn't my idea. It was Natasha's.
It's a good one.
We'll document that too and steal it. Let's move on. And we talked a lot about what people are failing to do. I'm going to flip this question since it's been kind of a negative start so far. But in your opinion, what is the leading, or maybe what's the practice that people they're doing, sales leaders are doing, that's causing them to hit the number? This question was originally about missing the number, but what is working for people that, we've got almost 100 plus people on here. What do folks not know that is critical to hitting the number? And I'm going to start with, I'm going to go Steve, Trish, Jared, LB, real quick to keep this thing moving.
Real quick, I think people do a good job with funnel math. I think people are doing a better job coordinating with marketing. I think, and this sounds negative, but a lot of these products and services are selling themselves in many cases for people who hit the number. The sales leader sort of ends up in the right place at the right time, but they're good at moving the knobs to optimize, and people understand what that Serious Decisions has their funnel math. That whole thought process is we're better at that than we were 5 years ago.
Great. What do you think, Trish?
So I think the most successful sales leaders I know still sell. And I mean from qualify the lead through close. I think if you don't keep your finger on the pulse of your buyer, their objections, your competitive positioning, how many people are in the decision-making process. I mean, if you don't actually know, if you're just hearing about it and not actually doing it, well, that's why your team's not succeeding. So it would be like trying to learn how to drive by sitting in the passenger seat. I think that's what most VPs of sales does. They're like, oh, really? That's what I do? Okay, that's how that's going to, get in the driver's seat and figure it out yourself. And I think you can build a better team.
That's critical. Moving clockwise, Jared, what do you think people are actually doing well right now?
Trading and coaching. The question was originally, what are they not doing? And most people are not doing that well enough. And just to build off Trish, you have to know the answers to the test. If someone comes to you and asks a question and you can't tell them exactly what needs to happen, then you aren't doing a good job of moving those deals or moving those STRs to qualified meetings. So whether you're coaching or managing or training SDRs or AEs, you have to know the next steps and document them. And if people can learn that plan, you can repeat and duplicate yourself. And that's your job. You've got to do that.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I love that. So first, I'm going to say one other way that VPs at a higher level can get in the driver's seat, to use Trish's analogy, is listening to their calls, right? So again, using a tool like ExecVision, and there's people out there, like you said, buying all the shiny tools to accelerate and let's hammer it and get more conversations, but they don't actually listen to the quality of that conversation. Because I think if they did, they would steal Jared's tip, do a little bit more training and coaching to make sure that was a conversation they wanted to accelerate.
Hey, Lauren, can I just jump in on that real quick? Because you got just hold that thought. This is genius. One of the sales VPs we work with, he makes calls himself. And Trish, I know you do this. He makes calls himself. He gets all recorded, and he's created a knowledge base of all the different voice of customer talking about how they relate to competitors and everything else. And it's
awesome.
Then you can handle it, and then you can share it with everybody else. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, that's killer. I've got one other strategy that's a little bit different that I've seen some leaders do in this last year, and I love it, and I want to tell everybody about it. It's about getting more from each lead or account. So if we're looking at leads, right? Like you said, some people just make it, Steve, right? Right product, right time, ton of leads being thrown at it. But what's not happening is a large percentage of their floor hitting quota, right? We've got some superstars killing it, but we can't duplicate it, to Jared's point. Well, what those people I've seen do is kind of focus in on the cherry picking. And you reverse the cherry picking by looking at lead management strategies and sales qualification strategies. We all know lead qualification, but this is sales qualification. So, right, I'm a rep, I have 200 leads that come to me this week, and I'm just going to pick the 5 that are big money and are about to burst, right? How about instead, if all these 200, I had a sales qualification to look at their potential, because lead qualification's over, they're here, right? Now let me look at the potential of these 200 and make sure that I have some rules in place for how often I have to talk to them or how many calls I have to make to get more out of our leads. And that's, I love it when I see that happen.
Yeah, I like it, but I'm not sure you should have your salesperson do it. Because if your guy's making his number by cherry pick all day long, make the number for me. Having said that, as I said, I love your strategy. And I am actually starting to see people take sales development reps, instead of being top of funnel, they're middle of funnel. And their whole job is to nurture those great leads that came in, didn't close now, but definitely fit our ideal customer profile and where there's opportunity. So I think it's a matter of what resource you put on it that makes sense.
And where you put it.
Exactly.
Well, exactly. Because I get your point, right? Top rep, I'm going to cherry pick and I'm going to crush it. Yeah. But what could I have done? What happened to those 15 others, right, that weren't ready to fall into the basket, but all you had to do was tap it? You're leaving so much money on the table, right? And those sit there without the right lead rules. Those sit there in my bucket and just rot, right? Or around my tree, and nobody else gets to pick them.
Yeah, hey Trish, that's a good question. So how do you, the metrics I think for sales development and quota carrying inside salespeople are tricky, especially if you move to more of an account-based approach. Like I'll tell you a quick story. I sent a hockey jersey to a VP of sales at a company with over 500 people on the phone. This is one of my most wanted accounts. And I got the meeting like that. And we had hammered him with an SDR with calls and emails and texts and everything for eons and got nothing back. Yeah. You got that hockey jersey, he got back. So, and again, how do you measure that as a metric? Like number of hockey jerseys sent?
No, and Steve, I don't actually think it was the hockey jersey that got him. I think it was the whole process that got him, and then getting the hockey jersey from you, because you sent it, right? Yes. So that's what people are missing when it comes to an ABR strategy. And yes, people, we are branding around account-based revenue and not around account-based marketing. So I think it was the whole process. And the key to ABR, the key that people are missing is that your sales executives have to be involved. Like if you're just having SDRs and AEs pound your accounts, that is not account-based anything. That's just regular old crappy
not with ABR. Yeah, no.
But if you have like a really cohesive strategy where everyone in your organization is focused on getting to engagement with that account, that's the win. So yes, the hockey jersey was a brilliant idea, but I also think the fact that it came from you, definitely. And then the groundwork had been laid.
Yeah, my experience is, and this is me growing a company as opposed to going and working, as a consultant with a company, is there's a huge role for the SDRs and the ISRs and the other roles that we have here, because I just can't coordinate it all. And half the time I tell them, I'm like, I am a tool that you use to hit your numbers.
No, you are a tool, Steve. I had to, sorry.
It was too easy. But this goes back to my question, because this is a hard one. Right? Coming from an organization where we have just, ground into their heads $120 a day, and it works, right? I mean, $120 a day generates 5-6 conversations, generates 1 to 2 meetings, sometimes more. Yeah, you can supplement with social, you can supplement with everything else. And now all of a sudden you're in an environment where if you're doing very specific target account outbound ABR strategy, how do you measure that? Because it could probably get really easy to go, well, yeah, I sent my 5 things in the mail today and I didn't get any meetings, and then all of a sudden it turns into like
I mean, we could do a whole nother webinar on ABR strategies and metrics. So
I think sorry, Trish. I think net is, in that case with the hockey jersey, sorry to jump in, but you're a human. That person saw you as a human, not just as, a machine hitting him.
I think that's the biggest thing. I constantly say to our people and to anyone who has advice, be a human. Everyone's a robot now. I think we're going to see so much more in 2018 where you have to do the hockey jersey. I've sent Smirnoff Ices to people where they just stopped calling me, or they stopped taking calls, and it was a great op, and ice them. So it works for some people. It's not going to work for everybody. Know your audience, definitely, but be a human, and do not think the cold email is going to do anything, and you have to pick up the phone.
I love that, Jared.
And we have to teach our
Everybody
reps how to be humans too, right, Jared?
Absolutely.
Right? Like,
right, LB?
it is. That's training, and it's we've got this thing called Engage, and we do an Engage-o-meter, and it's like right, because they just sound like these scripted robots, and we've built that, right, because we threw the log on the fire and gave it a script on the way in, up, in smoke. I don't know. I've lost the thread on that joke, but
That's good. That's great. I think I think that's definitely the case as we've turned people into robots. Let's jump into the last, what I would call like really wide topic, and it's about culture, recognizing. I'm gonna start with Jared and then pass to Trish, LB, and Steve. Jared, what do you think about recognizing sales reps for things other than quota attainment, other than hitting their goal? So example, if a sales rep is at 65% of quota, and they're getting, maybe 5-star ratings from their customers, or they're putting in the work, how do you feel about, motivating or at least recognizing around some of these second tier metrics?
Yeah, so I'm obviously a huge proponent of this, but I'm also not a proponent of everybody gets a trophy, right? It's not everybody gets a trophy. 65% is okay, but it's not the objective. You need to focus on hitting the number. But there's a way to getting the number, right? If you're an SDR and you need to produce 20 sales a month or create X amount of pipeline or X amount of meetings, that's the objective. That's true north. You have to get there, and reps, you owe it to your leadership to do that, but leaders, you owe it to your reps to get them there. And I think a big part of that is Steve, you mentioned 120 calls. That's not a ton of fun, but you need to do it. It's a part of the job, and people need to be accountable to hitting those dials or hitting those emails or sending the jerseys, being clever, being a human. And those are things you must celebrate, because not everybody's going to hit it every month, but you can hit it every quarter. And that's important. So I do think recognizing the earlier funnel metrics for the role, whether you're an SDR, an account executive, or a field enterprise rep, you've got to work the plan before you get revenue, and coaching and recognizing to those metrics is really important. Yeah. So yeah, I'm a big believer in that. But you don't, it's not everybody gets a trophy mentality. Like, you've got to hit the number, and that's a two-way street. Manager, you owe it to your team to get them there. Reps, you owe it to your leadership to work the plan.
Trish, I want to hear your thoughts on that. I know you know the numbers maybe better than anyone. What do you think about recognizing these metrics?
I mean, I think the numbers are the numbers, and sometimes the numbers set someone up for failure, right? So if you're an SDR leader, for example, and you're an inbound only, and you assign people to geos and give them vanilla quotas, you just pretty much screwed 80% of your team, because only certain territories generate all the leads. But where I think people are starting to turn the corner is to look at their team and say, who's doing self-development? Who is self-aware? I think we need to reward people for wanting to perfect their craft, for asking questions, for reading books, for asking if they can go to events or webinars. Those are our future leaders, the people that are self-aware and are willing to invest their own time, effort, and energy in their career development and perfecting their craft. To me, I would reward that person all day long and make sure that I did everything in my power to keep them, because that's the kind of people we want.
That's a good one.
Absolutely.
That's a really good one. LB, Steve, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Trish, you had a great specific behavior that you would like to see recognized. Like, if I'm just going to bring that up a level, right? We have to look at not just what gets done, hitting the number, but how it gets done. Mm-hmm. And those are smart companies that are looking at and celebrating behaviors, right? Some of the hows. So I believe in that 100%, right? I think that we find different things to recognize reps for, and we do continue to recognize, because it's a tough sport, 120 dials a day, right? So let's find new and different ways to recognize them. Now, does that mean you get a trophy for having, 5-star reviews, but you still can't hit the number? No, it doesn't. We have to have sort of an order of how these things work, a strategy that says, here's the gates, right? If you're not willing to put in the minimum effort, then guess what? You don't get past the gate for winning a trophy on the hows. And by the way, then the big trophies are on the big wins. But I'm going to flip it around for you and say, if you're a leader who's smart enough to focus on the how and to reward the right behaviors, such as self-development, curiosity, tenacity, etc., then you also have to be willing to fire for the same behaviors or lack thereof.
Yeah.
There are way too many sales leaders out there, manager, director, and VP, who are too scared to fire a top rep.
Yeah.
Right? These guys are hitting the number and they're carrying the team, but they're dicks and they're not doing it right. And they're alienating customers and they're alienating team members. They become these cancers. And if you're afraid to hire a top who's doing it wrong, just ask yourself what that lady's book could do or leads could do when put into the hands, right, of 10 other B players or A- players that surround them with the right attitude.
LB, I was fired once in my life, once, and I was the top performer in the group.
Trish, I just don't see that kind of ego on you.
Hell
That's
yeah,
shocking
I deserved.
to me. Yeah,
I deserve
right?
to be fired.
Were you a dick?
Oh, it was
Pardon
the 80s.
me, everybody, right?
It was
But
the
it
80s.
was
It's the 80s.
It was
We
the
got
80s.
we got an amen from the crowd, so somebody like
An
that.
amen. Yay!
Yeah, Brian, I'm seeing some pretty cool questions, but I'll answer just, and Jared, this will play right into your hand. I'm just going to serve you up a nice one.
Dang it.
What we're seeing over here, because if you actually do the exercise around how activities relate to objectives and results, which is from Cracking the Sales Management Code.
Yeah.
What we see is actually in many cases, it's not the number of each activity, it's the ratios that are more important, because ultimately, and I'll just use prospecting as an example. In prospecting, there are two personas. There's the librarians. The librarians will do research all day long and make like 4 phone calls. And then there are the cowboys, and the cowboys will just shoot from the hip and ask questions later. We can call them cow people. We'll be gender neutral. The whole point is that if you look at the best people, they have the blend of both. They do enough activity, but they're also good with doing the research. And we call them sniper shooters. So one of the things that we see in our team and our SDRs in our business, they measure this, and our ISRs too, is I'd actually rather have you have more results for less activity. That's the desired outcome, because that means you'll become really good at being a sniper shooter. So our top SDR right now, she's down to making about 60 dials a day, but her dial to conversation rate is down to about 17. And we're tracking it all closely, down to 17, because she's very strategic with who she dials, when she dials them, why she dials them, all that kind of stuff, how she dials them, what kind of method she uses to dial them. And then, so she's got that down to 17. And then her conversation to appointment ratio, she's at like 60%. So if she gets someone on the phone, she's getting an appointment 60% of the time.
Yep.
That's a sniper shooter. She's got to consistently produce, 25, 30 completed appointments per month, which is 2 to 3x what other people. So the ratios, people look at the ratios. That tells you what's really going on in your engine.
And don't look at them in aggregate. Everybody looks at them in aggregate, right? Look at them rep by rep by rep.
And you
That's,
can train sniper shooting. I just want to say that, right, Steve?
Yes.
That is a trained skill. Nobody hired in that girl
Nope.
performing like that. Because I know how you develop your people, and a lot of time and effort went into that.
Yep.
We've had some great questions from the audience. I want to start giving you guys some of the opportunities. We're going to skip some of the lightning round that we had planned. I'm going to just go from most recent, and I'm going to go backwards. But everyone's going to be able to speak about this one. But can you guys talk about the annual sales planning? What's the best practices around? And this is a tough one. Increasing quota on high growth sales teams while also accounting for new headcount, ramping up the rep productivity.
Yeah.
I think
Jared, that one's hard. That one's all you, buddy.
Yeah, that's
You go, Jared.
That's
Yeah,
almost.
Jared,
Go ahead, Abby.
no, I was going to say, Jared's got this. Nobody knows the numbers like Jared. And the way he uses ambition to study the different steps in the sales process.
That's
I bet you said it well.
From Amanda out here, but
Amanda, that's an almost impossible question to answer without more clarity. But you've got to know what's possible. Can an SDR hit 20 sales? Like most people take an annual number. They say, hey, you're going to do 540K in ACV this year. That's really hard to do, especially if you hire someone in June. So you can't say this is the divide by 12. This is the monthly number divided by 4. This is the quarterly number. You have to stair step it. Whether it's an account executive role or an SDR role, you need to be very scripted in what is attainable. Because if you say, go do 45K, and think in that example, a month, day one, you're simply not going to do it. So you have to make whatever the number is, bite-size, manageable. But by quarter 2, you should be more or less like hitting those numbers. And if you're not, then you're off plan. And it's all about that first 90 days. So I hope that kind of answers your question, but you need to stair step it, not divided by 12, divided by by 4, you have to think really, really about your sales cycle, about the leads coming through, and you have to make in the background on LB side, you have to make it unique to your business and the ramp.
Tell them about that ramp, LB. When especially, I think the hard part of this question, and I'm going to speak for Amanda. I don't know you, but great to meet you, Amanda. When you're
and welcome to.
You're squeezing more higher expectations with more bodies to account for, or more people going and selling. How do you see people do that successfully?
When you're hiring more, say it again. Sorry about that,
I think
Amanda.
Part of her question is that you're adding more salespeople, but you're also increasing the quota. So you have more people selling, against that customer base. You're expecting more from your people, and people are going to get more effective. You kind of have 3 competing, methodologies at once.
Yeah, it's so true, right? And everybody's at a different stage in their development. And I think that one of the things that's hard for us as leaders is that the average lifespan of an inside sales rep is like 1.5 years, right? So as soon as you feel like, okay, I'm going to get the top 20% and we're going to get even more from them, guess what? They're brand new reps again. And we shoot ourselves in the foot by not looking at that ramp time, like Jared said, right? Dividing by 12. So if you're going to raise quotas for people, we have to give them new tools, new strategies, and help in doing that, right? Otherwise, I think that's part of the reason for the burnout that says, okay, I've been here a year. I've been improving every year. I feel like I'm maxing it out. I can't make any more dials. I've got everything else is the same, but now I'm going to do 25% more magically. How's that going to happen? So we have to have that coherent strategy and sort of that enablement come down through the levels to help everybody rise where they are. So it's sort of like raising the tide, but somebody new is going to raise by this percentage and they'll perform here. And somebody who's more tenured or with better accounts or a higher level, perhaps, right? A rep 2 or a rep 3 will also raise the tide. I hope that answers the question.
Hey, Brian, let me jump in because there's one little tip I'll give Amanda. It comes from a sales leader in New York City named Sam Jacobs. I've known him for many years. He wrote an article about this. I'd have to dig it up, but he talks about how, the problem is the VCs and investors and board and everybody will just take the number divided by the number of people and say, there you go, hire that number of people. Yeah. And of course, the first thing we beat the horse on is the ramp. We have not accounted for the ramp. But the second thing that he talks about, he argues, is the lead flow. And accounting for the lead flow, because if you put one of those reps in particular that's been fed in another organization, if you're dealing with that kind of high growth model, they expect to be fed by marketing. So if all of a sudden you take your lead flow of your workable leads and there's not enough to keep that rep fed, they're not going to make their number. It doesn't matter. So you have to do marketing planning concurrent with sales. You always want to balance it in a place where there's just a little bit too few leads, just a little bit, not a lot. Just a little bit. We want to keep them a little lean,
hungry.
A little hungry, right? But if we keep them too hungry, you're not going to have any chance to make a number. If you feed them too well, you're going to have these other problems we've been talking about before. So that's food for thought. I didn't think of it.
Just a data point from our research. Only in SaaS companies for AEs, only 50% of their pipeline comes from marketing or SDRs. So you better go find that other 48% yourself and know how to do it. So just a little reality setting. And I think that's high. That's probably for a low ACV SaaS company. I think as the numbers get higher and as your ACV gets higher, it's going to be more and more and more. You figure out how to go make your number. So I don't want inbound to be too big a crutch.
I think Mac's question, I don't know if you are looking at the questions coming in, kind of plays well into that. Brian,
read it, Jared. Read it.
It's kind of long, but hiring SaaS reps, executive team won't approve higher salary for them, wants to go with a lower salary. Basically, how do I get A players? I'm summarizing. But you need to hire A players, like pay for them. Like Trish just said, 50% of the money they're going to close per her very in-depth research is going to come from their skills, their efforts. And most people, especially if you hire somebody who's new, aren't going to know how to do that. They're not going to know how to pick up the phone and go find new business. They're not going to have a network. So if you're hiring, lower level people, you better have a very, very, very good sales playbook and strategy to ramp them quickly, because everything they know is coming from what you tell them. They don't have experience. So I would say pay the money, hire some great people. Obviously it has to align with your ACVs and your business and what you do, but I think you have to pay for quality performers.
Right. And if you're, who is it, Mac? If you're in a B2B tech company, go download our research and show that to them.
Yep.
Because, the market is the market. And if you don't want to pay market rate, go buy those 4-day-old bananas then.
We've heard that Guy Kawasaki quote, Trish, for years at the HubSpot things where he says, if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys.
Oh, I love that.
It's a beautiful one from his Apple days. And the other thing I would think about there is if you can't ever get approval for more money, which is a reality in many cases, you're just not going to get more for salary. How do you handle that? You have to sell the salesperson on the career path and what it's going to take to get from one stage or one gate to the next, and try to make it as objective and quantifiable as possible so that you can show, hey, look, if you're able to achieve this, you'll move to this level faster. You can generally sell an executive committee and a board on paying more money for someone who's performing and producing revenue. So
put the budget on the upside, right? Yeah. It's a lower base, but you're going to kill it, right? Maybe we're not capping commissions.
I love it. Let's keep going. I think there's a good question that relates to this a little bit. I'd love to hear everyone's take on it quickly from Steve Cook. On coaching, how should managers allocate their time coaching? Let's call it A players, B players, C players, and experts weigh in. Let's go backwards. LB, you start this one and we'll go in reverse order.
Listen, I think Steve at Exec Vision has a ton of expertise on coaching, but I think that you really do have to have a strategy, right? And I think that's where we miss it, because sales management is the busiest job in the universe. And every time we have a new idea about something as sales leaders, we just toss it over to the sales managers, right? And coaching is the last thing in the world that happens. So A, do have a strategy, right? Start with your B players and your new players, and they get double the time of your D players and other players, right? Because you're going to get your biggest uplift there. Doesn't mean you can ignore your A's and your D's, but like if a D isn't willing to do any of his own work to get there, I'm not going to waste the manager's time on getting it there. And then my other tip is, and then I'll turn it over to Steve, make sure that you're teaching your managers how to be a good coach, because great coaching can lift the number, but bad coaching can absolutely sink it. And I will tell you that when I go out and assess managers when they're doing call coaching, about 1 in 50 to 75 are natural coaches. Why? Because we were players before. We've got high egos. We're competitive. We don't have the damn patience to be a good coach. So you got to teach those skills to new managers. All right, Steve, do it better.
Yeah, that was it. And it's not my opinion. It's the research from the Corporate Executive Board that showed, and there's a very cool research graphic that goes with this. They measured it, and they looked at a bell curve of performance, and the A's didn't get that much better. And they all received equal performance. The A's got a little better. The bottom of the bell curve didn't get that much better. All the improvement came from B's, so 80% of your time should be spent on your B's, so Laura nailed it there. And then in terms of how to coach, people always value more. It's a lesson I learned from a mentor of mine. They value more what they conclude for themselves than what they're told. So to the extent that you can get the person to figure those things out on their own, it's going to stick in their brain a lot better. Really, actually, if you think about coaching and ramp, what we're trying to do is we're trying to accelerate the process of failure, and we're trying to accelerate the process of building scar tissue. And I've been in sales for 15 years. I can't tell you all the deals I've won. I can tell you all of the real painful deals I've lost, and there are about 5 of them that are real painful. And the reason for that is neuroscience, because our brains are wired. So if we have a really negative thing that happens in our life, it could be personal injury, a divorce, whatever it is, we literally rewrite our brain in such a way that it's hardwired to seize those situations and avoid them in the future. So we're trying to accelerate the path of failure so that we can get the reps to the point where they have a lot of scar tissue, and then they can be A players faster.
Do you know, one of the things I love about Ambition and about Exec Vision is that when you can get in and be scoring people during coaching, right? And when you can turn this subjective interaction into an objective score and use that as part of your KPIs and things that you're measuring regularly, I think that not many companies have figured that out yet. And I'll tell you what, that's why I fell in love with Ambition, because you can help measure things that aren't just spit out of your CRM, right? Jared, do you have a lot of companies looking at measuring coaching? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, that's probably the hottest term on the market right now. And there's a lot of great softwares doing a lot of different things around it. But, to speak to Steve for a second, A, B's, and C's, I think most managers they're like, oh, I need to spend time with the C's. You shouldn't just spend time with the folks that are not performing. A's obviously have it figured out. And I like to use the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, and then apply the Jack Welch principle, which is the 20-70-10. Let's just say that's your A's, your B's, your C's. A's have it figured out, right? Give them a long leash, but help them. Like, be there for them, but don't manage them. B's are where you can get them to A's. C's, you need to be very explicit and very much like, hey, this is what needs to happen. And if it doesn't happen, they're not the person for your company. In many ways, they need to move on. It's better for them, better for you. So coach your B's, get them to A's, and you're going to have a lot of success that way.
And Richard Smith said if you can get 10% improvement on an A player, that's more return than a 10% uplift on a B player. Yeah, to your point, Richard, you're right. You don't ignore your A's, but you just don't have to spend as much time with them, generally speaking, to get that 10% improvement.
Plus, you've got 10% of your group that are A's and a huge swath of B's, right? So when you add that all together, that's when you get the rising tide.
3 hours in a day. Trish, do you want to weigh in on this one?
Nope.
All right, let's keep going.
I think it's been said.
I think let's bounce back really quick. I know we're going to get close to end of time. We still have a great number of participants. Let's do
Welcome, Steve.
coaching. This is from Bill Shelby earlier. A lot of lip service about the importance, yet it appears to be a pain point due to numerous other responsibilities of sales managers, team leads are juggling, and the limited of training on this skill. I'm assuming that means the skill of coaching. Mm-hmm. He just has thoughts, but how do we get those coaches to, not only maximize their skill set, but also in the limited number of hours in a day, effectively impart that coaching on their team? Trish, you didn't get a shot at the last one, or you passed on it. You want to start on this one? Or?
Yeah, it's top down, right? No sales manager is going to coach unless they are measured, maybe even compensated on their ability to coach, because it's, it's a lip service situation, and it's so annoying, but that's what it is. So if it's a top down, if your VP of sales doesn't value coaching, you don't have to do it, because unless you want to, because it's not part of your culture, and coaching is very much cultural. So I think those at the top, if you really believe in coaching, it's got to be a trickle down thing, and you've got to have some meat behind it, not just lip service, some real meat behind it.
If you are a leader and coaching is important to you and you're not sure what to do, here's a couple ideas, right? And everybody jump on in here as you want to. The first one is, like Trish said, measure it, maybe even compensate or bonus on if it's happening and if it's happening well. And tools like Steve's and Jared's can help us do that, right? Lauren's team is consistently here. Trish's team seems to be trending up. She's doing her coaching. The results are showing that. And I love that we have tools that can show us that now. Couple other tips for VPs. One, coaching results belong in your roll-up meetings. Ask about what's happening, right? Hey, I know that you're working a lot with Steve. How are the results going? What are the top 3 skill needs that you're seeing coming out of coaching? When you ask about it, you show that it's important. And another top tip is make sure that you have a strategic coaching calendar in place on your floor. This means that managers have blocked out time in their calendars where they're coaching, and it's not at dumb times like the last week of the month, and it's not all at the same time, so nobody's on the floor, right? But if the 5 of us were a management team, right? Brian and Trish are coaching on Monday afternoons and Wednesday afternoons, and Steve and Jared are on Tuesdays and whatever, right? There's floor coverage, and during those coaching times, VPs, quit asking them for stuff. Like, it's coaching as well. It's on your calendar, so walk the floor. Give some high fives, recognize managers who are doing it right, let them know you're going to be inspecting it, and, don't ask for a huge report in the middle of that time. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Trish, for the top down, I got an interesting story from a client conversation this morning. And he said, now this guy's a client.
You had a really busy morning.
No kidding.
I already had
December.
He's
calls with 3 of our
He's
clients.
been up since 4.
Yeah.
Just rolling. Yeah. This morning it was kids books with my 2-year-old at about 5:30, so that was fun. Anyway, so he said, and this, I thought this was really interesting. This is more of a manager rep thing, but it sets the tone from the top down. And this is a situation where he inherited a group of farmers, and they're trying to get on a hunt. I mean, we've all seen this movie before. That's a tough one. Mm-hmm. And you first of all have to weed out the people who even have the will to even try to want to change their skill set from a farmer to a hunter, and he's trying to figure that out.
So now we have this many.
Yeah, exactly. That's yeah. And he said, this is where he said, I got him on a thing where I said I'm going to be tracking you, playing your calls in Exec Vision, and then commenting on your calls, scoring your calls, and we're going to actually track that as one of the metrics I hold you accountable to. And he said accountability is a 2-way street, which I really love that whole thought. It's not just manager top down; it's also rep going up to management team. Accountability is a 2-way street. So this one rep he had a conversation with, and he could tell this guy wasn't buying in. And what he said was, sat down with him and said, it doesn't seem like you're writing any comments into your calls. You're not doing this kind of stuff. He goes, no, but I'm playing all my calls. So I really am, boss. I'm really, really doing it. He goes, I can track that. And Exec Vision goes, yeah, you got me. I'm not doing it. And actually, I don't really think I should be in hunting sales after all. I think I'm in the wrong role.
Oh, great. A coaching call ended in a termination. Yay.
But that's one of the beauties of coaching.
I don't want to make it about being negative. I don't want to try to drag it to negative, because the coaching culture has to be positive and productive. We all learned that from Kyle Porter. It's got to be positive, productive. At the same time, accountability is a two-way street.
Yep.
You
Fair.
gotta track
Hey,
it.
can I make one?
It doesn't happen.
Can I make one more point about coaching?
Please.
I had the distinct pleasure of being coached by LB a few months ago, right?
Thanks.
We belong to this group called Women Sales Pros, and one of the sessions that we're running was record your sales calls and LB will coach you. So who's the first one in? Me, because I think I'm all that, right? I'm like, I am all that. Whoop, whoop, whoop.
And she
Okay.
is.
No, she took a half-hour call. We got through the first 15 minutes and I had like 19 pages of notes. It was like insane. No matter where you are in your career, get a coach. Post that event. Now, LB's running a high growth business. I couldn't get her. I found someone who had some bandwidth and I hired myself a sales coach.
Good.
I've been selling for 30 years. It is the best thing I ever invested in my life. And I owe it all to LB. So thank you, LB.
Oh,
I love it.
I'm done for the day.
That couldn't get better as far as a real life review on the live. Last question. We've got 3 minutes. People are gonna start taking their lunch. Jared, I'm gonna toss this one to you because Jen Wise asks, how do you keep the SDR role dynamic, especially for higher tenured reps, for the purpose of reducing boredom, also I'm sure attrition, as they wait to get promoted? You got a 30-second lightning round here.
Oh goodness, I'm trying to find Jen's exact question here. Keeping the SDR role dynamic for higher tenured reps. You've got to make it fun. Like SDR is about, grinding, and that's tough. Like people, Trish, your research shows people do not want to do that for a long time. Mm-hmm. So make that more fun and always be coaching them. I keep saying coaching, but they want to get to the next level. And if they don't, ask them, do you want to be a career SDR? Great. Let's find a way to get that higher gear for you, and always be asking that, back and forth. How do I get you to your next step? Is that here at our company? And can I take it to another company? Whatever it may be, connect with your people one-to-one, and ask them what they want and get them there. And I think they'll work the plan that you lay out for them.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I'm going to just go ahead and wrap it up. You guys, panelists, fantastic. Thank you so much. Trish Bertuzzi, Steve Richard, Lauren Bailey, Jared Houghton. We will be posting this for the, looks like 84 people still here who lunch didn't steal so far. Thank you so much for joining. Your questions were awesome. There were extra questions. We'll try to answer them. We will be posting this and sharing more updates from our experts. But last but not least, thank you guys so much. Happy selling last 2 real weeks of the year.
Yep, let's do it.
Let's go get it done. And thank you all so much. Thanks for joining, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Brian.
Take care.
Take care.